The day my family called me a failure, I didn't cry. I simply smiled. Not because their words didn't hurt. They did. They settled deep inside my heart like cold rain that refused to stop. But after 63 years of living, I had learned something important. Sometimes silence speaks louder than tears. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I am a Black American woman born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. My parents never had much money, but they taught me something more valuable than wealth. They taught me dignity. They taught me that a person's character was worth more than the number in their bank account. For most of my life, I believed my family understood that too. I was wrong. 3 months before everything changed, my son Marcus invited everyone to his beautiful house outside Atlanta for our yearly family dinner. The house was so large that it looked more like a small hotel than a family home. Every room sparkled. Every piece of furniture looked expensive. I felt nervous the moment I stepped through the front door. I had taken 2 buses to get there because my old car had finally stopped working. Buying another one simply wasn't possible. My retirement check barely covered my rent, groceries, and medicine. Still, I wore my favorite blue dress. It wasn't new, but I had ironed it carefully that morning. My mother used to tell me, looking neat costs nothing. I still believed her. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, opened the door with a smile that never reached her eyes. "You made it," she said. "I wouldn't miss seeing my family." She stepped aside without another word. Inside, everyone was laughing. My grandchildren were running through the living room. My younger sister Denise stood near the kitchen island wearing gold jewelry that caught the light every time she moved. She looked at me for a second before saying, "Evelyn, you still riding the bus?" A few people chuckled. I forced a smile. "It gets me where I need to go," Denise shrugged. "I guess that's one way to look at it." I pretended the comment didn't bother me. It wasn't the first time. Ever since Marcus became successful with his construction company, people acted as if success had erased every struggle we once shared. Dinner was beautiful: roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, homemade biscuits. Everyone talked about vacations, new businesses, expensive schools, and investment properties. I mostly listened. Whenever I tried to join the conversation, someone interrupted before I finished speaking. After a while, I stopped trying, then Marcus raised his glass. "I want to thank everyone who supported me on my journey." Everyone clapped. I did too. He smiled proudly before adding, "Success comes from making smart choices." Vanessa laughed softly, "and not staying stuck in the past." Again, people laughed. I looked down at my plate. My hands suddenly felt very old. After dinner, I walked onto the back porch to enjoy the evening air. Grandpa Henry was already sitting there. He was 90 years old, but his eyes were still sharp. He had always been the quiet one in our family. He spoke little, but when he did, everyone listened. He smiled when he saw me. "You look tired, Evie." Only Grandpa still called me Evie. "I'm all right." "No." He shook his head gently. "You've been carrying pain that doesn't belong to you." His words almost broke me. I sat beside him without speaking. For several minutes, we simply watched the sunset paint the Georgia sky in shades of orange and purple. Finally, Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a small folded piece of paper. "What is this?" I asked. "Keep it." I unfolded it. It contained only one sentence. "The truth always arrives in a sealed envelope." I frowned. "I don't understand." "You don't need to." "Not yet." Before I could ask another question, Vanessa stepped onto the porch. "There you are," she said. "Everyone's waiting." Grandpa smiled quietly. "They can wait another minute." Vanessa's smile disappeared. She looked at me instead. "You know, Evelyn, sometimes people hold successful families back without even realizing it." The words hung in the air. I stared at her. "I'm not sure what you mean." She folded her arms. "I mean, some people spend their whole lives expecting others to carry them." The porch became painfully quiet. Grandpa's face hardened. I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came, because the truth was, she wasn't talking about some people. She was talking about me. And before that week was over, my own family would call me the biggest failure among them. None of us knew that Grandpa had already made one final decision. A decision hidden inside a sealed envelope. One that would change every single life in our family forever. For the next few weeks, I tried to forget what Vanessa had said on the porch. I told myself she was under stress. Marcus's business was growing fast. They had 2 children, a busy life, and more responsibilities than ever before. Maybe her words had come out the wrong way. That was easier to believe than admitting my own family saw me as a burden. Life returned to its quiet routine. Every morning, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the small window in my apartment. I watched neighbors walk their dogs, children wait for school buses, and people hurry to work. My days were simple. I volunteered twice a week at the neighborhood food pantry, read books from the public library, and called Grandpa Henry every Sunday evening. Those phone calls became my favorite part of the week. He never asked how much money I had or what I had accomplished. Instead, he asked, "Did you find something that made you smile this week?" Sometimes it was a little girl at the pantry who hugged me after I helped her mother carry groceries. Sometimes it was watching the rain fall while listening to old gospel songs. Grandpa always smiled when I answered. "That's the kind of wealth people forget about," he would say. One Saturday afternoon, Marcus called, "Mom, we're having another family gathering next weekend." "That sounds nice. Vanessa wants everyone there." His voice sounded careful, almost nervous. "I'll be there." When I arrived the following weekend, I noticed several expensive cars parked outside the house. Inside, the family was talking excitedly about a new business project Marcus planned to launch. Everyone had an opinion, everyone except me. I quietly took my seat near the end of the dining table. Denise looked across at me with a small smile. "So, Evelyn, have you finally decided to sell that old apartment building Grandpa left you?" I shook my head. "No, it's not worth much, but it's home." Laughed. "You're always holding on to things that never grow." Vanessa joined the conversation. "Honestly, that building is probably worth less than the repairs it needs." A few people nodded. I looked down at my hands. The building wasn't beautiful. It had peeling paint, old pipes, and creaky wooden floors, but it was where I had raised Marcus after his father passed away. Every hallway held memories. Every room reminded me that love could exist even when money did not. To me, it was priceless. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, maybe they're right." I slowly looked at him. "You could sell it and finally enjoy life." "I already enjoy my life," he sighed. "I just don't want you struggling anymore." "I've never been afraid of hard work." Before he could answer, Vanessa leaned back in her chair. "Sometimes pride keeps people poor." The room became quiet. No one defended me. No one said her words were unfair. Instead, they looked away as if silence were easier than kindness. I felt my heart grow heavy, not because they thought I was poor, but because they believed being poor meant I had failed. Grandpa Henry had been listening without saying a word. Finally, he placed his coffee cup on the table. "I've lived long enough to know something." Everyone turned toward him. The richest person in a room isn't always the one with the biggest house. His calm voice filled the room. Sometimes it's the person who still has peace when everyone else is chasing more. No one spoke. Vanessa forced a polite smile, but I could see the annoyance in her eyes. After lunch, Grandpa asked me to walk with him through the backyard. The autumn leaves covered the grass in shades of gold and red. He moved slowly, leaning on his cane. "Evie," he said softly, "promise me something. Anything. When people judge your value, don't argue with them." I frowned. "Why not?" "Because the truth doesn't need defending." He looked toward the old oak tree at the edge of the yard. It only needs time. I didn't fully understand his words, but I trusted him. As we walked back toward the house, I noticed a black sedan pulling into the driveway. A man stepped out wearing a dark suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Grandpa watched him with a quiet smile. Then he whispered something that sent a chill through me. "He's early." I looked at Grandpa, confused. "Who is he?" Grandpa's eyes never left the man walking toward the front door. "You'll know soon enough." And for the first time, I realized Grandpa had been preparing for something long before the rest of us had any idea. The man with the leather briefcase introduced himself as Mr. Collins. He was polite, well-dressed, and spoke with a calm voice that immediately caught everyone's attention. "Good afternoon," he said. "I apologize for arriving without much notice." Marcus stepped forward and shook his hand. "Can we help you?" Mr. Collins smiled. "I believe so. I'm here to visit Mr. Henry Brooks." Grandpa slowly walked to the front door, leaning on his cane. "I've been expecting you." Those words surprised everyone. Vanessa looked at Marcus. "You knew about this?" Marcus shook his head. "No." Grandpa invited Mr. Collins into the living room. The rest of us followed, exchanging confused looks. It was clear this wasn't an ordinary visit. Mr. Collins placed his leather briefcase beside his chair but didn't open it. "I only came to confirm a few details," he said. Grandpa nodded. "I understand." The two men spoke quietly for several minutes. They mentioned papers, signatures, and dates, but nothing that made sense to the rest of us. Finally, Mr. Collins stood. "Everything is in order." Grandpa smiled. "Thank you." Before leaving, Mr. Collins looked around the room. "I hope your family remembers that kindness is worth more than possessions." No one knew what to say. He picked up his briefcase, shook Grandpa's hand one last time, and walked out the front door. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, the questions began. "What was that about?" Denise asked. Grandpa simply smiled. "Just old business." Vanessa crossed her arms. "That looked like a lawyer." "It was," Marcus frowned. "Is everything okay, Grandpa?" "It will be." His answers only made everyone more curious. The afternoon continued, but the mood had changed. Conversations felt forced. Everyone kept wondering why Grandpa had met with a lawyer without telling anyone. A few hours later, people began saying their goodbyes. I hugged my grandchildren and reached for my purse. Before I could leave, Grandpa gently touched my arm. "Stay a little longer, Evie." "Of course." Soon, the house was quiet. Only Grandpa, Marcus, Vanessa, and I remained. Grandpa asked Marcus to make fresh coffee. While he was in the kitchen, Grandpa looked at me with the same gentle eyes he had always had. "Have you ever regretted helping someone?" I thought for a moment. "No, even if they never thanked you," I smiled softly. "Kindness isn't supposed to come with a receipt." Grandpa chuckled. "That's exactly what your grandmother used to say." Marcus returned with 4 cups of coffee. We sat together in silence for a while. Then Vanessa spoke. "I still think Evelyn worries too much about holding onto old things." I looked at her but stayed quiet. She continued. "Sometimes people have to accept that they didn't accomplish what they hoped." Marcus didn't stop her. He simply stared into his coffee. Grandpa slowly placed his cup on the table. "Tell me something, Vanessa." She looked surprised. "Yes. What do you believe success looks like?" She answered without hesitation. "A beautiful home, financial security, building something important." Grandpa nodded. "Those are wonderful things." Then he turned toward me. "Evie, what does success look like to you?" I took a deep breath. "I think success is going to bed knowing you didn't hurt anyone that day." The room became completely still. Grandpa smiled proudly. "I hoped you'd say that." Vanessa gave a quiet laugh. "That's a nice thought, but it doesn't pay the bills." Grandpa's expression changed. "No." He looked directly into her eyes. "But it builds something money never can." No one spoke after that. The silence felt heavier than any argument. As the evening sun slipped below the trees, I finally stood to leave. Grandpa walked me to the front porch. He hugged me tightly. It lasted longer than usual. "You've always carried this family with your heart," he whispered. "I don't think anyone sees that." "They will." He reached into his pocket again. This time, he didn't hand me another note. Instead, he gently squeezed my hand. "When the envelope is opened, don't let bitterness find a place in your heart." I looked at him, confused. "What envelope?" He simply smiled. "The one that will tell everyone who the real success in this family has always been." I watched him standing on the porch as I walked toward the bus stop. I had no idea those would be the last words Grandpa would ever say to me. 3 days later, my phone rang before sunrise. Marcus was crying. "Mom!" My heart stopped. "Grandpa passed away last night." And suddenly, I understood why the lawyer had come. The sealed envelope had never been about paperwork. It had always been about the truth Grandpa wanted us all to face. The morning of Grandpa Henry's funeral was cold and gray. Rain fell gently against the church windows as family and friends gathered to say goodbye. The soft sound of the piano filled the room, and for the first time in many years, our family sat together without arguing. No one had the heart for it. I held a small photograph of Grandpa in my hands. It had been taken years ago on the front porch of his old house. He was smiling, wearing his favorite brown hat and looking happier than I had ever seen him. That was the man I wanted to remember. After the service, Marcus walked beside me to the cemetery. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. I looked at him. "For what?" He lowered his eyes. "I should have called more. I should have listened more." I gently touched his arm. "It's never too late to become a better son." He nodded, but I could still see the guilt on his face. Just as people began leaving the cemetery, a familiar black sedan pulled into the parking lot. Mr. Collins stepped out carrying the same leather briefcase. He approached our family with calm, respectful steps. "My deepest condolences," he said. Then he looked around at everyone. "Mr. Henry Brooks requested that the entire family meet at my office tomorrow afternoon." Denise frowned. "Is this about the will?" Mr. Collins gave a polite smile. "It is about Mr. Brooks' final wishes." Vanessa's eyes immediately lit up. Marcus looked surprised. I simply remained quiet. The next afternoon, every chair inside Mr. Collins' office was filled. The room smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee. Large shelves of law books lined the walls, making the room feel even quieter. Mr. Collins placed Grandpa's file on the table. "I appreciate everyone coming." No one spoke. You could almost feel the nervousness filling the room. Denise leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "Grandpa owned that old farmland outside Savannah. It's worth a fortune now." Vanessa smiled. "And don't forget his investment accounts." I heard every word. It wasn't my place to judge them. Grief affects people differently. Still, it saddened me that money had become the center of the conversation less than 24 hours after we buried the man we loved. Mr. Collins slowly opened the file. Mr. Brooks left personal gifts for several family members. He handed out small envelopes. Denise received one. Marcus received one. The grandchildren each received handwritten letters. When Mr. Collins reached my chair, he paused. Then he placed nothing in front of me. Vanessa noticed immediately. She glanced at me before looking away. I told myself it didn't matter. Grandpa had already given me more love than anyone ever could. Mr. Collins continued reading. Mr. Brooks wished for everyone to hear these words together. He unfolded a handwritten letter. "If you are sitting in this room today, then my journey has ended. I hope you remember me not by what I owned, but by how I treated people." His voice filled the room. "Money can build houses, but only kindness builds families." Silence settled over us. Marcus quietly wiped his eyes. Then Mr. Collins looked back into the file. "There is one final instruction." He reached deeper inside and slowly removed a large sealed envelope. The same kind Grandpa had spoken about. Across the front, written in Grandpa's careful handwriting, were 7 simple words. Do not open until everyone is present. Every person in the room leaned forward. Even the sound of the clock on the wall seemed louder. Mr. Collins rested his hand on the envelope. "This," he said softly, "contains Mr. Brooks' final decision." Vanessa straightened in her chair. Denise smiled with quiet confidence. Marcus reached for my hand beneath the table. I squeezed it gently. Mr. Collins carefully broke the seal. He unfolded the papers inside. His eyes moved across the first page. Then, for the first time since meeting him, I saw genuine surprise on his face. He looked up slowly. His eyes settled on me. "Evelyn!" The room became completely still. My heart began to pound. I had no idea why he was looking at me. Then he spoke the words that changed everything. "Mrs. Brooks, your grandfather's final instructions begin with your name." Every eye in the room turned toward me. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Mr. Collins adjusted his glasses and looked down at Grandpa's handwritten pages. His voice was calm. "Evelyn Brooks, before anyone receives the rest of my estate, there is something my family needs to know." The room was silent. You could hear nothing except the ticking clock on the wall. Mr. Collins continued reading. "Many people measure success by money, expensive homes, and impressive careers. I once believed those things mattered most. Then I spent years watching my family and I realized I was wrong." He paused before turning the page. "The richest person in this family is not the one with the largest bank account. It is the one who never stopped giving, even when she had very little." My eyes filled with tears. I already knew who Grandpa was talking about. Still, hearing those words felt unreal. Mr. Collins looked at me kindly before reading again. "Evelyn never asked me for money. She never expected rewards. She visited me every week, brought me groceries when I was too proud to ask for help, drove me to doctor's appointments, and sat beside me on lonely afternoons when everyone else said they were too busy." Marcus slowly lowered his head. Vanessa stared at the table. Denise didn't say a word. Mr. Collins continued. "There were days when Evelyn skipped buying things for herself so I would never feel like a burden. She believed I never noticed. I noticed every single time." Tears rolled down my cheeks. I had never helped Grandpa because I wanted recognition. I simply loved him. Mr. Collins opened the final page. "Because character is worth more than wealth, I leave my savings, my farmland, and every remaining asset in my estate to my granddaughter, Evelyn Brooks." The room fell completely silent. No one moved, no one even seemed to breathe. Denise whispered, That can't be right." Mr. Collins calmly slid the signed documents across the table. "It is completely legal. Mr. Brooks updated his will several months ago." Vanessa's face turned pale. Marcus looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, I didn't know." I reached across the table and gently held his hand. "I know you didn't." He shook his head. "No, I should have known." I was so busy chasing success that I forgot who taught me what really matters. For the first time in years, he cried openly, not because of the money, because of the shame he felt. Vanessa finally spoke. "Evelyn, I'm sorry." Her voice trembled. "I judged you. I thought having less money meant you had accomplished less in life." I looked at her quietly. The hurt she had caused me was real, but so was Grandpa's final lesson. I smiled through my tears. "I forgive you." She covered her face and began to cry. Even Denise wiped tears from her eyes. Grandpa had managed to bring our family together one last time, not through his wealth, but through his wisdom. Several months later, I made my first decision. I kept the old apartment building. It was still home. I also used part of Grandpa's inheritance to repair it and turn the empty first floor into a community learning center where children could read after school and older neighbors could gather without feeling alone. Marcus volunteered on weekends to help with the renovations. Vanessa organized food drives for local families. Even Denise began visiting every Sunday with homemade desserts instead of opinions. Little by little, our family changed. Not because we became richer. Because we became kinder. Sometimes I still sit beside the window with my morning coffee. I think about Grandpa. I remember the small folded note he gave me on the porch. The truth always arrives in a sealed envelope. He was right. But the greatest gift inside that envelope wasn't the inheritance. It was the reminder that a person's true value can never be measured by money, titles, or success. People may call you a failure because they cannot see your heart. But those who truly love you will always recognize the quiet sacrifices you make when no one else is watching. And in the end, that kind of wealth is the only kind that truly lasts.